Here's a softball one.
Where do we start?
Here's one to get us going.
Okay,
so
here.
one of our patrons, one of our patrons.
Thank you, by the way.
In the Patreon chat. Yes, thank you to everybody who has
Subscribe,
signed
rate,
up
review.
for the Patreon. There's some social engagement going in there. We had a couple good suggestions. Adam wrote in on the episode where we were talking about the all-staff meeting. So we recorded me, you, and Chuck prepping for the all-staff meeting and trying to figure out what we should talk to the staff about and what we should not talk to the staff about. He said, have you guys ever thought about doing a survey for your staff to see what they want to hear about, and then that could help you cater the meeting? And I replied really quickly, for a meeting like this, I think it's really important that leadership sets the tone of what's going to happen in the meeting. And I was like, I just gave a really short answer, so we can talk
dive
about
into
it.
why a little
talk
bit
about
more.
it more because it's a
really
great,
good reasons.
Yeah, it's a really great question, and I couldn't write a whole lot on it in the Patreon comments.
That is a good question, and it's there are some actually I think really important and rad places for surveys and feedback from the team. But when you're doing a vision for the company, I mean, I'm sure you wrote this really straightforward. Like, that needs to be led by the visionary leaders of the company, and it needs to be held with the passion and conviction that we have behind the belief in where we're going. And if you potentially put, when we've done this, we talk about another podcast, if you put the future of the company in the hands of people who care a lot, but never as much as we will care about the company, you could inadvertently go into tangents that are not going to serve the whole company the best.
Yeah. I feel for a meeting like that, it's not just a meeting to throw out information. A big part of a meeting like that is being inspired and coming with a strong sense of purpose from the leadership is going to inspire way more than saying, hey, we're having a meeting. What do you want to hear about?
Right.
And then you come to the meeting and you kind of already know what everybody's going to talk about. There's nothing that'll get you really juiced up. And I also think there's this other section of it, which is, how are you going to schedule me for a meeting? Say, hey, block out this 1 hour for a meeting. Also, what should we talk about at the meeting?
Absolutely.
It feels like really soft leadership, and that's where you get into something that almost feels like a paradox. That is, you would think people would want X amount of control in driving that meeting forward, but we've had much better results when we've taken full ownership of the meeting and played forward, like you said, with our vision.
Well, I
painting
think
that picture.
I think maybe people from the outside looking in don't necessarily see how our organization is structured to work in the context of communication. So it's super valid in most places where they don't know what the company's doing. They don't have the ability to ask questions and get answers. But in our company, you actually can get a lot of answers to questions day in and day out if you just ask. Somebody's going to have the answer in leadership anyway. The other thing that maybe people don't recognize is that we put together essentially a newsreel via camera that we release every week with updates. And so in those little reels, the Cat and Cloud News, we deliver a lot of the information that is necessary for the time being. So there is an ability for a back and forth, because what will happen is our team leaders and our group of leaders at the executive team, we gather feedback. What are people asking questions about? What's happening during the week? And then we deliver company-wide information based on that. And then if it's not necessarily worth addressing the entire company, to your point, like not everybody needs to hear every single detail, then there's always an opportunity to connect with somebody in leadership, whether it's Grace, myself, you, Charles, and really first and foremost, their team leaders who are empowered to lead first, and coordinators. Like, they are, as much as we can, in the know is to what is going on in the company. And that is absolutely imperative, as we've seen in the past. If your direct leaders are not competent and not leading, they shouldn't be there. And we know that now. We know that because we allowed competent people who weren't engaging in growing the company. They passed the buck to us And that is a problem. That doesn't work in terms of real, true leadership and organizational culture.
I take it for granted that we do all of those things, that we probably have better and more consistent communication than probably 90% of workplaces out there because we're so intentional about it. And this is an evolution. We haven't always been this good at it.
No, we've worked hard.
Yeah, it's been trial and error.
We're getting better.
Yeah, we're getting better all the time. It's one of our values. We actively pursue better. So we're not trying to act like we're at cruising altitude or anything.
No, we're not even close. But we're
forever
trying.
Better, for sure. But I think for a lot of organizations, or a lot of ones that we used to work at anyway, and I know just from talking to other people, I know from just posting some of the shit that I post on Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
That in my mind is really positive and I don't know, frames the possibility of what work could be in a positive light. Some of the negative responses, because people just don't believe that there could ever be a workplace like that.
Oh, I
because
totally
their boss is just too much of an asshole, or they don't get this, or they don't get that, and it's just so completely disconnected. So not everybody's having our same work experience. So
do you think that's because people are thinking too small?
I think people are,
because that's what I do first and foremost. I go, you're thinking too small. You're thinking, as an owner, you're not thinking far enough ahead, or you don't have enough trust in people to bring them along with you.
I think it's a couple things. Well,
There's multiple levels.
Let me read a comment that just got my brain.
It's in your mind.
Yeah, I got my brain working.
Yeah, pull up the comment. Let's hear.
And I don't think this person, if you're listening to this, I don't think this comment isn't a negative comment at all. It's actually something that is super common.
I think a lot of the stuff comes from frustration of wanting better but not knowing how to get there.
Yes. Or just that and a perspective. I think a lot of it has to do with a perspective shift.
Well, that's always, There's always perspectives out there that if you haven't heard a different one, let's go.
So I was writing about and posted a little cartoon on Instagram.
Was it the how do we support each other one?
Yeah, about the supporting each other versus attacking
like what do you even do?
Yeah, because you could see,
we've been there.
Employees and employers, like on both sides of the coin, people looking the other way, be like, I don't know what the fuck my boss does.
Right.
And the flip side, the boss is like, I don't even know what the fuck this guy's been doing the whole time. He's a jerk, and like flipping that over and saying, maybe instead of accusing them, like asking these accusatory questions, we could ask better questions, like how could I better support you? What could I do better?
Right.
On both sides of the equation. And
isn't it interesting that that foreshadowing is even in itself creating a certain kind of culture?
Yes.
Which is really good.
Absolutely.
But that's, I think, something that people like, anyway.
Right. Like
they don't realize that's a culture.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a culture, and it shouldn't be that weird, I don't think it has to be so, but a lot of workplaces do have this us versus them mentality. You've got
been there,
the employee versus the boss, and that's how it exists. And there's probably multiple levels of that,
right.
Like from the owner to their staff to just me versus my cafe manager, and then different groups of that. So someone wrote, the us versus them mentality comes from the fact that it's not an equal relationship. And I understand where they're coming from in that, but if you have and this doesn't only apply to employees and bosses, you can, translate this us versus them mentality to your family, your friends, whoever you want to work with.
Equal relationships
but
hard.
When you do have an employee-employer relationship, it's not an equal relationship.
Yeah, it kind of shouldn't be.
You have a hierarchy. There are status roles built into an organization where whoever owns the company or whoever is managing you has a higher status in that company. So but I'm saying you don't need to have equal status or a completely equal relationship to be playing towards the same goal.
Absolutely.
So being able to realize, because we've all been the new guy, right?
Sure.
You and I have both been the new guys.
Yeah.
Now we're not the new guy anymore. We're the business owner. But when you're the new guy, there are certain things that come along with being the new guy. You do have less perks. You have less autonomy. You have less freedom. There is a certain amount of, even in a trusting work space, like you have to earn your keep and prove that you can contribute.
Yeah.
And
that's part of anything.
That's just part of anything. That's
any
part
team,
of growth. That's part of
any
learning.
Job, any world.
So instead of being the new person and focusing only on the inequity in the relationship between you and your boss, you can focus on, okay, cool, I'm the new person here, but my boss has this mission, my organization has this mission, and I am a part of that mission. So what is my contribution to making that mission happen, and how can I contribute to that? And that's really what we need to be looking for, rather than, how do I get to be exactly where my boss is? And coincidentally, if we can do those things well, and you're in an organization that recognizes that, that is probably the best path to getting to where you want to go. If you're talking about moving up the chain in a hierarchy.
I mean, you're totally talking about creating a positive culture, and it's mission driven. And I guess that's probably where people aren't experiencing that in their day-to-day work. And that's a frustrating thing to experience, because I think that will allow people, or kind of force people into this place where they haven't been able to really believe in the perspective that you're talking about, because they've never seen anybody give that shit. And then there's the other side of this, which is you want to break it really hard down and be like totally ice cold. That equity versus owner versus you is like, you get paid by that owner at the end of the day. Like, there really will be you can tell the owner that they should do it different as much as you want. I've been there, frustrated in my own way in the past, but like, they pay you to do something. That's your problem. Like, you should be able to have an open conversation, but that's what you signed up for at the end of the day. Like, you signed up to do work for somebody who pays you. And if you want to make that money, obviously, hopefully you want to make it better, and they want to make it better. And hopefully you can find a place where if you're in the right place, and you leave and find a better job because it doesn't work, which I think is part of this equity thing. The other part is like, you signed up for that. Unless there's some track to leadership that you know about, that's kind of what a job is. And that's really frustrating to feel that way, but that's why we're so passionate about creating cultures where your work is meaningful, and where the leadership group shares and helps you see that your work is meaningful when you maybe don't see it day in and day out.
Yeah, and there's a big difference between being bought in and not bought in, and how you ask questions. So you could ask a question, I could ask you a question like, hey, I'm working on this thing, and I was just kind of wondering, why do we do it like this? Because I'm trying to do the best job that I can.
Sure.
Versus, why do I do it like this?
Yeah.
Why are we even doing this? Why do we do it like this?
Yeah.
Same question, different inflection, and you're projecting a different outcome. One is I want to be helpful. I want to help the organization move forward. I want to be on this team, because that's not just going to make me better. I'm going to learn some insight, but it's going to make everybody better.
Yeah.
And work is more fun when you approach it with that attitude versus, I don't fucking believe in this at all.
Yeah.
And I just want I'm trying to force you to tell me something so I can just say,
right,
you're full of shit.
Yeah. Or I'm testing you to see if I can do what I want to do in your company, instead of, people test you all the time.
Yeah,
it's like test the leadership group,
and that's
sort of normal.
That's pretty normal and natural. I mean, I don't have kids, but you do, and I'm sure your kids test you.
Yeah, they will, and they don't even know they're doing it, but they'll push.
Yeah, they're not trying to be a jerks. They're, in their case, they're just exploring the world.
Yeah.
What
and they
can
want
I do?
something.
Like, how can I?
They got ideas. They want to input their influence on the thing that they're into. All that's really good, as long as you're open with communicating with each other.
And just like with employees, you're there as their father to foster the good things and the awesome ideas, and not to crush those, but also, hey, you have a lot more experience than they do. You're not just a sure, yeah, do that. Sure, yeah, do that. You have to teach them. And if you don't, we know what happens when your kids grow up.
Right.
If they haven't been,
it's a little weird.
You're
reminding me, just on the same subject, yesterday, because I was roasting coffee and I popped into Swift to the close, and Emily, shout out Emily, one of our newest team members. She's only been here a month or two, possibly. She was talking to me about going through orientation and hearing all of who we are and how we're, into people development and growth, and she's like, I've been in restaurant industries for a really long time, and I totally enjoy the fast pace. And I got here and I learned in orientation. I was really psyched, and then I was, you wonder in the back of your head, like, how real is it going to be when I get going? And she goes, it's been better than I expected. It's been like, the people here are so supportive. We do want to grow together. We do help each other become better. And she's all, and it's crazy. The guests that come in here are die-hard Cat and Cloud. She goes, they come from everywhere to see this place. I can't believe it's real, and I really enjoy it, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm growing, and I just want to thank you guys for putting it together. And I was like, well, at this point, yeah, like, I super appreciate that, but we're not doing that anymore. We set the stage, and all of you all are doing that now. So I hope that you see that like your work is perpetuating exactly what you love if you keep doing it along with these people. And if you help them to see that what you just told me is real when they're having an off day, and hopefully they do it for you, like, yeah, it's just been really, really awesome. And I think that in and of itself is such a packaged, perfect example of what you're talking about. Of this is a brand new person who shared a nice thing, and yeah, they're going to share it with the owner. Maybe not, because it's like fully authentic, and maybe because they're like, I just want to share it, like have a quick moment with the owner because I don't like to talk to the owner. And both of those things are okay and they're good. I think it was authentic either way.
Right.
But the flip was like, I literally have nothing to do with anything that you just said anymore. Like, and that's okay. So if you are a team member and you want the owner to be doing what she just kind of gave me a compliment about, who's going to be the person who steps into that place and takes over leading in the future if you need the owner to do it? And I think that's the paradox that people forget about, is you and or somebody needs to consistently take the place of the next leader so a business can grow. If you ever want to do something culturally and amazing in coffee, everybody just gives up too soon. Like, the responsibility of business owners to make an amazing place, people get going, and then the leadership somehow can't sustain the culture, the growth, all of that shit enough to make what is possible.
What do you mean by give up?
The reason I say give up is this. You think about starting like the ultimate coffee experience, the one where people will pay more, all the things, like the shit, right? And people start them, and you start to see success. And then all of the people who are working in that place, they move on to start their own business, or they move on to do something else. They don't grow together. Something happens. And we're a little bit of a product of that, but not so much because there was no growth opportunity. It was more we had different values alignment. But I think about places like Venice. It opened, line out the door. At the time, it was like a groundbreaking version of doing coffee with the multiple coffee bars, multiple people nicely, Babinski, Glenn, like all these people who are Melissa Muckerman, and Chris Owens was there, like all-star cast, right? Place is cranking. And all of them go off to start their own thing and do something else because of whatever reason. Right. Not a knock on Intelli, it just happened. But if somehow there was an ability to grow that and sustain some sort of career, and there was true buy-in, you could probably keep doing something on that level, and then it dips. So I kind of feel like there's something that's been missing that we have a responsibility as business owners.
I think it's the same thing that happened to us with our first wave of leadership people. It's
right.
It seems like it's all based on alignment of values or misalignment of values.
So really, totally like we and the leaders and owners of companies need to dig in and ensure that the people stepping into leadership are always consistently aligned and able to continue to push the organization forward. And that's where I'm saying people kind of give up. They get tired and they go, you know what? I need a leader.
Who knows if they gave up? It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell in those situations because it's probably a combination of a few things. Yeah. There's that misalignment. It's both sides of the coin. There's probably people working there that are really hungry, who in some cases, just because I know some of these people and their friends, are in their own ways pretty entitled and are like, I deserve this, I need this, that, and the other.
Right.
And I totally resonate with some of those things. There's times when I felt like that as well. And, my boss needs to give me this because I'm worth it. And the ownership of a company like them, they were growing pretty rapidly at the time, even though they're nowhere near as big as they are now.
Yeah, because they weren't invested at that point with the JB
it was
stuff.
Just the initial LA expansion from Chicago to LA.
Silver Lake Plus.
And they just have a completely different priority. None of those companies are really cultural companies, which is interesting. Like Intelligentsia had a cool culture when you went to the bar. Right. I like going to Silver Lake. It was fun. That was
probably at the time my favorite experience of coffee.
Yeah, it was entertaining. It had a vibe. It was really cranking.
You could see famous people there.
You could see
I saw Zach De La
Zach De La
Roca. That was my favorite day ever. You ever watch this, Zach?
Maybe from
Maybe was right in line with us too.
Arrested Development.
Arrested Development, yeah.
I don't even know that person's name.
Yeah.
But none of the companies, at least from our conversation, were thinking about careers in coffee or fostering healthy workplace cultures. It was more of the goal was to make a really awesome coffee experience.
Sure.
Done.
Yeah.
And I know they had classrooms, and I remember some educational training, but I don't know if they had any leadership training. But what I think is, if you're ready to give something and somebody's not ready to receive it, there's a disconnect there. So when we worked at Verve and we were getting to the tail end of where we were at, which the time between when there was this barista magazine article published about us, we were on the cover, and
that was 2012, right?
That was
13 maybe?
13 maybe.
Because we had both done super well, so it was right after that, yeah.
And the whole premise of that article was, Sarah's like, so we're trying to put together some stories about people who didn't have to go and start their own coffee shops, people who found a company that they really resonated with and were able to build a career within that company. And we were one of the case studies.
Yeah.
And so we had this whole article about how we found this really great place here. The time between that and us leaving is probably only like a year.
It was a year, but in that year is when they brought on new CEOs and new vibes.
Right. And if you would have asked at that point in time, even though I've always had frustrations with anywhere you've worked at, that's completely natural. No place is 100% perfect.
No, but at that time when we got on the magazine, I was in.
I would have been, oh yeah. And I told people, they're like, what do you want to do? You ever going to open your place? I was like, I don't want to own a business. I'm going to be here forever. This is good. This is great.
Yeah, we're going there.
We're good, And then certain things happen, and we got to this point to where we had a gift that we wanted to give.
Yeah.
And someone wasn't ready to receive it. And the ownership that we can take on our part is we didn't have it as figured out as we thought we had it.
No.
But I think we would have made
we had gut feelings.
We had gut feelings, and I think we would have made a really good go. And some of the things that weren't allowed to happen turned what could have been a really good place into a deal breaker.
Yeah,
so
for real.
I remember that meeting at Betty Burger where we pitched the training thing. And this is just for perspective, because to let everybody know that, we've been where you're at. This is not a hate thing, and I totally understand.
Everybody's learning, dude.
Yeah, everybody's learning.
That's the thing. Like, everybody that we pitch these things to, they're trying to figure it out too.
We had a whole plan for education, management, and we had this retail training collaboration thing that we pitched to Colby and Ryan.
We definitely believed in leadership on a different level than the rest of that company.
I was excited, and I was scared too, because I had never done anything like it, aside from the training portion of it.
It was a whole different thing.
But it was this whole kit.
Yeah.
And we broke it down, and one of the first questions they asked was like, who's in charge? And we're like, well, we're in charge.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you guys can't both be in charge. Someone's got to be the boss. And you're like, well, Chris can be in charge. That's fine. I can work for him. Air quotes here. Work for him,
Yeah.
And it's not a problem. No ego. No problem.
Because we're trying to make the company better.
I just want to make this happen.
Yeah.
Whatever can make this happen. And you've always been good at that, is just being like, I don't care. Whatever's going to make it work.
Because the end result is the thing.
Yeah.
It's not the me.
Anyway, there's a whole lesson there in and of itself. But
thanks.
They listened to that, and then at the end of the day said, you guys shouldn't work together at all. Point blank, period.
Yeah, they split us up.
They framed it in the context of, hey, we're doing you a favor because there's going to be tension. Trust us, we know. Business relationships are hard. And they were pretty open about some of their, we've had
hard.
tension between us too.
Yeah.
It's obviously hard. Any relationship that's worth having is challenging sometimes. So, and that.
Well, and they had the final say, right? So it was like, okay. So
at the end of the day, we couldn't
not
work
doing
together.
anything.
So we're split up on completely different sides of the business.
Yeah.
And that was a different kind of year, because looking back on it now, that definitely pushed us apart individually too, because we just weren't spending
different shit.
any time together at work. We would just see each other in the office.
Yeah, it was so dumb.
Here and there.
Yeah. And then it was really numbers based because the different CEO came in.
Yeah,
it was
a lot
all
of
money
organizational
based.
shifts.
Yeah.
So that could have been happening in these other companies too, to where
Absolutely.
I don't feel like, in terms of us, Like, I don't think we quit, and I don't think they quit on us, but it was just two different paths going completely different directions.
Yeah.
Well, and we had to make the call to where it's like, man, I don't really see a future here or a chance to progress.
Right.
So we had to do the thing that you're just talking about, which is, hey, pull out because the timing isn't right.
Yeah, the timing's not right.
To where if the
we also weren't painting a picture of the future for us, right?
No. It's interesting to think about. Now I can't think of doing anything else, but it could have been if they would have had some of those growing pains a little bit earlier. Let's say the outside CEO came in a couple years and they'd worked through all of that.
Man, and somehow we stayed.
Our ideas may have been received a little bit differently and probably more positively, because
there wasn't a version though to conflict management. And that I think was like the key to that, right? There was a fear around conflict management and working through like real hard shit, which is something that our company has taken and tried to take head on. Whether we've nailed it or not, we have consistently tried to better our ability to conflict manage with each other and with our team and peer to peer. Like that has been a key to this. And I think that is that's something that's just really important in life that is part of why I think our company is special. But could you imagine if, instead of being, no, we're going to protect you guys from having fights, being like, actually, if you're going to do this, you're going to need to you're going to need to do some conflict management practice together and do some like proper.
You're going to come in every other week and we're going to have an hour of
like mediated conversation about shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that kind of stuff is actually on the table at our company for leadership development. I mean, it happens every Friday actually. So it happened, like publicly.
And I see why people don't see those. This is fuck, dude.
Well, it's not about
I get where business owners, because what we were originally talking about, that us versus them thing, it works from the business owner's point of view too. You can't just hire people and be like, do your fucking job and expect people to be really bought into what you're doing. Listen to me because I'm the boss. Listen to me because I'm fucking started the company.
Right.
That doesn't work. You have a little work to do too, but I can understand why people don't do that work, because for a lot of people, owning and managing a business is so incredibly stressful. It takes every ounce of energy that they have, and all of those other things, even though they're absolutely necessary, feel extra. Where I'm happy if I can pay rent, make payroll, keep the lights on, and have enough to slide into next month and not have to take out another loan and hopefully sink this whole thing. I think that's where a lot of people live. Yeah. We weren't living in that situation in our other job, at least not to my knowledge. They weren't that strapped for cash.
Only a few times.
There were a few times, but there's other motivations that come into play too, to where one of the motivations some of the business owners have is, we need to be like these other people.
Sure.
That requires a certain thing, and you don't have that thing.
Yeah, we experienced that a few times.
So we've experienced that, but I totally dig why companies ignore that. I don't think that's it's definitely not an excuse for not doing it. You need to do that shit.
Yeah.
You kind of just it's kind of like if you're the new guy at a organization, and how we just talked about paying your dues, walking through the shit,
right,
getting to where you need to be to where you can earn that respect and move up the chain. It's the same thing when you're a business owner. If you're not ready to walk through the shit for a while, you might want to rethink the whole situation, because you are going to be walking through the shit. And the crappy thing is, not a lot of people are going to be seeing it. Not a lot of people are going to see the extra work that you put in. There's going to be so many late nights, so many early mornings, so many working on things behind the scenes
your brain's
to make
going.
what everybody else sees work.
Yeah.
And you have to pay into that bank for longer than you think.
I mean, yeah, I'm kind of internally laughing right now, because I know one of the things that's both annoying and really helpful about me is that the antithesis of all to what you just said is like, but if you put the time into, that's where, so you were talking about, paying rent and pay whatever, all the things, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, or you can ensure you got money in the bank by delivering the most amazing experience with the best hospitality and the most engagement and the most connection and the most, and I mean, that's what we lean into. But to me, those things that are intangible on the spreadsheet are the things that make all of those stressors so much lighter. And they do take all of the energy, but they also take the engagement and the people skills and the team and believing in people and painting a really clear picture of what should be happening in your cafe and why, and making sure that the people just below you, literally in the hierarchy of the organization, know that as well as you, so they can deliver it, so that they're saying the same things as you. And all of that stuff, people think, or people seem to act like it comes after I pay the bills, after I am making enough money, then I can dig into. And it's like, no, 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 no. This whole package that we started our company on, trying our best, even though we had to refine it multiple times over, mission, vision, values, you start there and you make that as clear as you possibly can, and you show them what you see could be possible in terms of what it feels like, what it looks like, no matter what the fuck's happening. And then they get excited and they try to do their best, and then everybody says, you know what, that's really, really good. I'm going to go there instead of all these other places. And then all of a sudden your bills are paid and you have the money to do, but you have to want it as an owner. You have to care about it as an owner, and you have to be able to do your best to encourage and entice the different kinds of people who feed off of different kinds of things to go there with you, so that they can get something out of it as well besides a job. And that, to me, has always been a no-brainer. So I sit in my mind and I'm like, I want to empathize, but I also feel like there needs to be more work done on this area, not the money-making area. And that's, I think, fair and normal. Everybody goes through it. And I know you agree.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when I'm empathizing, I can understand how people feel that way. Like, oh my gosh, I feel so underwater. I can't even think. I can't even move.
I'm not trying to minimize that.
No.
One goes the one way, right?
100%. And I think they can.
We've been there. We've made bad decisions. We opened up a fucking coffee kiosk at the jail.
But there's a difference between making a bad decision and what you're talking about, which is being so incredibly inspired from the jump that you know that your main mission, main goal is not just to put money in your pockets, but to do this thing.
Sure, that is
push
totally
towards this greater cause. And
good point.
That was one of the things that we pushed against right away, because we didn't know how to push towards the greater cause in the best way possible. So we started by looking at, cool, what was missing from our work experience? Okay, cool. There's some sort of health insurance, there's some sort of paid vacation, there's some sort of profit sharing. Some of these things that we have, some of these things that we don't have because they weren't working for their intended purpose. But we had this kit. And it's not the kit that was important, is the belief behind the kit. It's like, we do these things because we believe in this type of workplace culture.
Exactly.
And 9 out of 10 people who we talked to said, you can't do that stuff. That's for big companies. You got to get going first. And then once you're making money, then you'll be able to do that stuff.
Right. That's kind of where I was going, right?
Exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
And so while business owners think about that internally, people outside who they talk to are reinforcing that culture as well.
Exactly.
So we have this huge lack of belief internally and externally that something like this is even possible.
Right.
And you got to be a fucking idiot to even try.
Right. Instead, let's cut labor, let's run lean, let's get the cheapest shit because that's going to make us the most money in margins. And all of a sudden you're like, it just doesn't feel, it's real. Every day's stressful and I just go to work. And
even though it's crazy, because even though you're learning so much at the beginning and so much is brand new and you have that feeling of being completely underwater and you don't know what the hell is happening, if your business continues to grow and expand and you make more money, you have more revenue and you have more possibility, even though you have more staff, it also comes with more complexity, and you're always still doing new things and pushing into new territory. So people are like, oh, wait till it gets easier. It doesn't get easier. It just changes. The challenges that you have are different than they were when you first started. So to think that you're going to get to one point where it's like, cool, I pushed the cruise control. My business is at cruising altitude. Let me take care of all the stuff that I've been neglecting for the past 3 years, and then think that everyone's going to catch up in the same way that you are?
No.
Yeah, fucking right.
No.
You're going to have 80 people on staff who are listening to you talk this
idea
talk that they've never heard of and be like, what the fuck is this?
That's not even the company I work for.
I've never heard of this. Like, I don't even believe you. Why don't you believe me? I'm really passionate about it. So, well, I've been working here for 5 years. You've never mentioned this once.
Right.
How is this you?
Right.
Like, where did you get this from?
And
They're
then
like,
you're
no,
stacked.
I've been believing it all along. I just kept it in my pocket. I was just waiting for the right time. It's like, go fuck yourself,
And that,
dude. Like,
that to me is the stuff. That's exactly the
know.
point. And then even if you want to make a change for the better, which we've had to make changes for the better, and they are hard. And the most hard one happened through the pandemic, which is awesome because we just stacked our problems. But fortunately, we had all the history of, we didn't nail it, but we nailed 95% of it. Everything we said, we hit 95% of it. And yeah, we failed on 5%, but I can tell you with all certainty that that's pretty fucking good numbers. And I'm here for it, and I'm going to do a good job moving through this. And we both individually had to say that to team members who were like, I don't know if I'm down with all this stuff. And we're like, we're going there. It's going to be better. Look back. You're frustrated right now, some of you. We fucked up some stuff. We learned some things. But look back. What have we done? What have we accomplished? This is what we're going to do now. Even if we do 95% of what we're talking about, it's way fucking better. So you can start with all that foundation, or you could start from ground zero and have to get everybody to start understanding that. It is, to me, like unfathomable that people don't put the work in first in all of these areas before they get going. They just pull the trigger. And I know that's unfair to say, but
this is where we're working against the cultural zeitgeist of what's happening. Because just like these comments that people are writing, nobody believes that a place like this is even possible. It's so rare.
Is that the ethics of the owners who don't follow through? Is it accidental? Like, and I there's obviously not one answer to this, but like, why are we amongst the unique quote unquote top tier when this seems so?
It's like
base level.
I think where we're at is we're in this place on the growth curve where we're seeing still not a lot, but we're seeing a few businesses operate in that way.
To happen.
It's kind of like if you took anything sports related, or let's say skateboarding or whatever. I think Rodney Mullen did the first 360 flip, probably sometime in the maybe 80s. I'm getting my dates all wrong or whatever.
Feels right, late 80s, mid 80s.
Or Alan Gelfand is the guy who invented the ollie.
Yeah.
And before that, for years, you've got people just sliding around on their boards, carving, shredding down the sidewalk, and then some dude just snaps his tail and goes up a curb, and everyone else is like, "What the fuck? Like that's real? That can happen? Like that's crazy."
Yeah.
And now kids learn the 360 flip like before they can do anything else. It's not even a big deal. It's just so common. It's like, oh yeah, that's just one of the things that you do.
Right. That's like, that's a basic. That's in everybody's toolkit.
If you don't see something,
yeah.
If your whole life experience, is negative in like if every work experience you've had for your entire life is negative, I can see why people think, man, work is just a place that sucks. Work is a place where I've never had a good boss. I've never had I never worked for anybody who had a greater sense of purpose. Every work situation I've been in has been transactional where I only trade my time for money. That's just what work is.
Right. There's nowhere else to go.
So that's where I feel like our bigger work is to help people realize that, hey, not only is Cat and Cloud cool and an awesome place to work and we're doing something that matters, but this is a culture that everybody can build in their own way.
Absolutely.
And this can be how work feels.
Right. Do the pre-work. Make it worth your life.
Who was it, Emily, you said to talk to you?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That experience that you had with Emily, other bosses can have that experience. You can also run a place where your employees come up to you and say, hey, you talked a really big game, and guess what? Exceeded my expectations.
Right.
And how awesome would that be?
Totally.
It'd be kick-ass.
So that's shout out to the leadership team along with Emily. Emily, thank you for sharing that. If you do happen to listen to this podcast, it was really cool.
Good share.
Hey, that's the end of the podcast. Thanks for listening. I know this is the time, the shameless, like classic, we need your help, but we do want to get our message out there, and we do want to share this with a lot of people. So if you could share this with others, you could subscribe, you could rate, you could review. It would greatly help us as we continue to push through not only the YouTube as it's fresh, but also the general podcast as we took nearly an entire year off from doing it. And so please do so, share it. I believe that we have some information and some perspectives that could help not only people in the coffee industry, but people in any industry, any walk of life. So do us that favor, do us that solid, bring us that love, and turn up for us, please. And I hope you all have a great time. Thanks for listening.